Greetings and welcome back. I'm going to tell you a story about one of my very dear friends. She was diagnosed with unbelievably aggressive breast cancer and actually went through a stem cell transplant. And she called me one day and she was real upset and she said, "Roberta, I think my cancer has come back." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And she said, "I just have chronic diarrhea." She said, "It won't stop. I can't change my diet or do anything to make the diarrhea go away." Well, as I went over to her house to give her some comfort, I saw all these mineral supplements on her kitchen table. And actually, when I added up the amount of magnesium she was taking, think milk and magnesia, she was taking enough to cause diarrhea. So it wasn't, thank goodness, a metastasis or a return of her cancer. What it actually was a magnesium overdose. So let's talk about minerals a little bit. Let's call this Minerals 101. Minerals are inorganic substances that the body needs in minute amounts in order to do a few functions. It needs to provide structure to components of tissue and cellular compounds, such as forming bones and teeth. They help to maintain chemical gradients such as acid-base balance, heart rhythm, contractility of muscles, and neural conductivity. Minerals also regulate the function of enzymatic activities at the cellular level. Well, there are 7 major minerals that are essential to life. The definition of major varies depending on the source that you read, but it generally means the amount that you need in your diet and isn't related to the importance of that mineral. In general, greater than 100 milligrams per day falls into that definition of a major mineral. So what are our major minerals? Calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium are all considered major minerals. Well, as a companion, there are 14 trace minerals, meaning that they're needed in less amount, less than 100 milligrams per day, but still vital to human nutrition. And these 14 trace minerals include iron, selenium, iodine, chromium, zinc, fluoride, copper, manganese, molybdenum, boron, silicon, vanadium, nickel, and strontium. And many of these you've heard of, and some of these you think these are brand new to me. And again, these are trace minerals. You need them, but you need them in small amounts. Well, let's compare and contrast here a little bit the difference between vitamins and minerals in human nutrition. Vitamins catalyze, which means cause or accelerate, chemical reactions in the body without becoming part of the reaction byproducts. Think about them as the spark plug in your engine. Some minerals become part of the body's structure and chemicals, such as calcium in bone and iron in hemoglobin. Another key compound or another key word here that we need to understand is bioavailability. Bioavailability is the amount of any particular mineral that you eat in your diet, and it's not necessarily the amount that your body will be able to absorb and use. So for example, spinach on paper contains a lot of calcium, but the body is only able to absorb and use about 5% of it. The same is true for dietary iron. The average efficiency of its absorption in the intestines is approximately 10%, and we discussed this in more detail in the iron lecture. Well, there are factors that play a role in the bioavailability of minerals in food sources, and one is the type of food. Minerals in animal products are more biologically available and readily absorbed by the small intestine. Animal products do not contain plant binders and dietary fibers that can slow digestion and hinder absorption. So we have to talk a little bit about fiber and mineral interactions. Diets high in fiber retard the absorption of calcium, iron, magnesium, and phosphorus. And I want you to think about this. If you're one of the Americans who's using a fiber supplement first thing in the morning along with your multivitamin, there may be too much fiber in that one meal, and it will bind and retard the absorption of those essential minerals. Fiber binds to these minerals and causes them to pass through the GI tract unabsorbed. Now, what about vitamin and mineral interactions? How do those pairs work together? Vitamins and minerals interact with each other in a way that affects how each is absorbed. So, for example, vitamin D enhances calcium absorption, and vitamin C enhances iron absorption. So again, those two minerals are better absorbed in the presence of those two vitamins. Well, what about mineral and mineral interactions? Many minerals compete with each other for absorption because they are of similar molecular weight. So it's really not a smart move to consume an excess of any one mineral because it can negatively affect another mineral's absorption. Now, calcium. Calcium is the most plentiful mineral in the human body, and it has several significant roles. Calcium is one of the skeleton's primary building blocks. We find more than 99% of the body's total calcium in our bones and teeth, where it again provides structural support. The rest, less than 1% of calcium, is found throughout the body. And where is it located? It's in fluid between cells, in the blood, and in the muscles. Outside of the function of calcium in bone, calcium plays many roles in secreting hormones and enzymes and regulating their activity. They send messages throughout the nervous system. They're involved in blood clotting, and they aid in blood vessel and muscle contraction and expansion. They contribute to normal heart rhythm. So beyond bone, calcium has wonderful, wonderful roles in human nutrition. So that these important processes can take place efficiently, body fluids and tissues must maintain a constant level of calcium. The skeleton stores calcium and other minerals. So here's what happens. If the blood calcium is too low, has to be within a very normal range, the body replenishes it with calcium that was stored in the bones. So again, the bones become a reservoir for extra calcium. Well, what about sources of calcium? I'm going to give you a few examples, but there are more examples that can be found in your guidebook. A cup of skim milk has about 300 milligrams of calcium. 3.5 ounces of salmon canned with the bones has 380. So again, if you're making salmon patties or croquettes, you got to mash the bones, don't discard them. And a half a cup of tofu has 130 milligrams of calcium. Well, how much calcium do I need? The daily reference intakes, or the DRIs for calcium, include, for males and females in that age category 19 to 50, you need 1,000 milligrams per day. So think about that for a second. If you're getting it predominantly from milk, it's over 3 glasses of milk per day. And for males and females between the ages of 51 and 70, 1,200 milligrams per day. Now, there is an upper limit. The maximum amount of calcium you should consume per day is 2,500 milligrams per day. So again, this is another example. More does not equal better. So here's a key point. The amount of calcium that is absorbed at one time is about 500 milligrams. And if it's taken with other competing minerals, the absorption will be less than this. So if you're taking calcium as a supplement and you need to take more than this, divide the dose. In general, the doses should be between 4 and 5 hours apart, but again, this can be influenced by the meal composition and your own individual state of health. Well, what about deficiencies in excess of calcium? Calcium deficiency per se is not often detected because there's a lack of symptoms until there's been an extensive amount of bone mass that's lost. Diets high in protein and sodium can limit the bioavailability of calcium. So as Americans consume more and more protein in their diet, there may be a negative impact on calcium status. When the reservoir of calcium in your bones is depleted, bone fractures can occur, and again, under very minimal stress. Outside of bone, the risk of inadequate calcium intake can lead to increased risk of hypertension, high blood pressure. Calcium is a key component of the DASH diet, which is covered in more detail in another lecture. Some studies also suggest there's an increased risk of colon cancer, but that's been, again, linked with poor calcium intake, but the results are conflicting. Osteopenia is the beginning of osteoporosis. In those diagnosed with osteopenia, bone mineral density is lower than optimal, but not enough to be diagnosed with osteoporosis. It is a bone mineral density value score of minus 1.0 to minus 2.5. Normal is minus 1. Osteoporosis is a disorder characterized by weak and porous bones and a bone mineral density score of greater than negative 2.5. Now, bones are a dynamic tissue and they are constantly going through resorption, which is bone breakdown, and deposition, or bone formation. As people grow older, the amount of resorption and deposition are altered. More formation and less breakdown during childhood. So again, children are making more bone and breaking down less. Older individuals, it's the reverse. I oftentimes say that you get one shot to build a skeleton, and that is during the period of rapid bone formation, age 11 to 24. So if you miss this very rapid bone formation time, you don't get a do-over later in life. In early middle adulthood, resorption and deposition are nearly the same. In aging adults, and particularly in postmenopausal women, resorption surpasses deposition and the result is bone loss. This bone loss increases the risk for osteoporosis. Some studies suggest within the first year after menopause, where the most bone loss occurs, it could be up to 7% of bone lost. Now keep in mind, weight-bearing exercise in addition to diet can help to reduce the loss. Make sure to include strength training, both lower and upper body, to maximize that. Calcium alone doesn't improve bone mass. In young women with anorexia nervosa, too little calories, too little vitamin D, and oftentimes the wrong form of exercise will contribute to bone loss in young women. Rickets can occur when vitamin D intake is inadequate, and that limits the amount of calcium that's being absorbed. Certainly, again, calcium deficiency can lead to poor blood clotting. Now, what about the excess? Excess intake can lead to a condition called hypercalcemia, which means elevated blood calcium. However, this is it is often due to excessive vitamin D intake and rarely from diet alone. In individuals with cancer, hypercalcemia may be present due to cancer's effect on the bone. So essentially, cancer that is metastasized to bone can chew up the bone and release the calcium. As a diagnosis, hypercalcemia itself can result in fatigue, depression, confusion, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, constipation, pancreatitis, and increased urination. There's also a decreased mineral absorption. Now, let's talk about magnesium. Magnesium is another essential mineral and the fourth most abundant in the human body. Magnesium as a mineral plays a role in bone mineralization, energy metabolism, muscle contraction, and nerve impulse transmission. About 50% of the body's total magnesium is housed in the bone. The other 50% is in cells of tissues and organs. Only 1% is in the blood, and the body keeps this fraction as a constant. So when a mineral is in the blood, the body's going to have a lot of defense mechanisms to keep that blood value normal. More than 300 enzymes require the use of magnesium. This includes all enzymes that use or make ATP, the energy currency of the body, as well as those that use nucleotides or the building blocks needed to create DNA and RNA. Reactions catalyzed by magnesium include, among others, fatty acid synthesis, glucose metabolism, and protein production. Magnesium also enhances the absorption of calcium in the intestine. So again, these two minerals work as partners. Increasingly, there has been awareness that magnesium may be used to treat and manage and prevent disorders such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and hypertension. Sources of magnesium. Sources of magnesium, I want you to think about it this way. Magnesium is to chlorophyll as iron is to hemoglobin. It is the central molecule. So just like iron is a central molecule in hemoglobin, magnesium is in the central mineral in chlorophyll. So what does that mean? That means that anything that's green that has chlorophyll in it is going to be a source of magnesium. Another source of magnesium can be tap water. Now the amount varies according to whether the water supply is hard, a lot of dissolved minerals, or soft. Okay, hard water usually naturally contains more minerals, including magnesium, than soft water. Here are some other sources of magnesium, and more can be found in your guidebook. Almonds, a half a cup of almonds, 238 milligrams. 1 ounce of unsweetened chocolate, my favorite food, 88 milligrams of magnesium. And a half a cup of spinach cooked, 66. So again, keep in mind, as we're looking at magnesium sources, what we're looking for, again, are those that are going to be varied, oftentimes plant-based, but most importantly, look for things that are green if you're looking at a consistent source of magnesium. Now here's a key point to remember. Whole grains are a great source of magnesium. However, when the grains are refined and they take off that outer bran area, magnesium and B vitamins are lost. The B vitamins are replaced, they're fortified back into that grain, but magnesium is not. Well, how much magnesium do I need? A sample from the daily reference intakes for magnesium is, for men aged 19 to 30, 400 milligrams, for males 31 to 70, 410, and for females 31 to 70, 320. Now, here's another key point. The upper limit for magnesium intake is around 350 milligrams per day, and that's from supplements. It's the supplements that confer the toxicity. You don't get a magnesium overdose from food. So my dear friend who was taking all that supplemental magnesium, she was at about 700 milligrams per day. She really exceeded the upper limit and again was taking enough magnesium to have that laxative effect. Well, what about magnesium balance? What about deficiency and toxicity? Magnesium deficiencies in the United States are not prevalent, and the concern about underconsumption of magnesium does not seem to be high among healthcare providers. However, dietary surveys, remember that's part of that nutrition assessment process, have proposed that Americans do not have enough magnesium in their diet. Optimal magnesium intake may protect against cardiovascular disease and immune dysfunction. Certainly, as with all minerals, a deficiency of magnesium can be compounded by other conditions. And deficiency of magnesium can be caused or complicated by acidosis. Alcohol abuse is a cause of magnesium deficiency. The use of diuretics that your physician might have prescribed for high blood pressure, and certainly kidney or renal disease can also cause a deficiency of magnesium. Low as well as high protein intake can also interfere or inhibit with magnesium absorption. Symptoms of magnesium deficiency include confusion, hallucinations, nervousness, muscular weakness, and this is probably the one that I see most often, tremors, and swallowing difficulties when values are exceptionally low. Again, that rarely occurs with diet, but can occur with some of the other confounders. Suboptimal levels of magnesium increase the likelihood of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. And keep in mind, these are of epidemic proportion in the United States. So one of your safeguards against that is, can I get more green leafy vegetables in my diet, and can I consume more whole grains? Now, some medications can cause a magnesium deficiency. Antibiotics, the diuretics that I mentioned, and anti-neoplastic medications used to treat cancer, particularly cisplatin. In the years 1999 to 2000, as well as the 1988 to 1994 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, oftentimes called NHANES, suggests that older adults are at increased risk for magnesium deficiency. Now, magnesium supplements, but go slowly here, magnesium supplements may benefit individuals who have trouble controlling their diabetes, and those are individuals who most often experience an increased magnesium loss in their urine. So what that means is, as your blood sugar becomes higher and you start to lose some of that glucose in your urine, the magnesium is going to be lost along with it. Certainly other people who may benefit are alcoholics. 30 to 60% of alcoholics and 90% of patients experiencing alcohol withdrawal demonstrate low blood levels of magnesium. Additionally, individuals exhibiting such malabsorptive disorders such as Crohn's disease may also benefit from magnesium supplements. As this becomes more popular, individuals who have had intestinal surgery, including gastric bypass, may need supplemental magnesium to keep their values normal. And certainly individuals with potassium and calcium deficiencies may also benefit from taking some additional magnesium. Now again, excess magnesium is filtered through the kidneys, so it's hard to overdose from dietary sources. But for people with renal disease who are prone to toxicity because magnesium imbalance is regulated by the kidneys, so that means renal disease can cause both magnesium deficiency and excess, but this really depends on the type of kidney disease that you have. So again, you may have a deficiency if you're taking a diuretic for high blood pressure, which is part of the kidney disease constellation. Or if you have the inability to urinate, you may actually retain the magnesium and have a magnesium excess. Typical symptoms of excess magnesium, again, include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, like my friend with cancer, and low blood pressure. If the state of excess continues for a prolonged period of time, the toxicity can result in cardiovascular and muscle irregularities. So here's a little bit of a take-home point here. Minerals interact with each other, minerals interact with vitamins, minerals interact with fiber. So again, I want you to think about it like you're setting up dominoes. If you knock down one because you're taking too much of one, you can influence the bioavailability of others. So again, the analogy I use is your body loves to go down the middle of the road, and when you decide to take a significant excess of magnesium or calcium, your body is going to be living in the ditch, and that's where you end up having problems with, again, too much magnesium or too much calcium. Now, what about vitamin and mineral interactions? What's the best time to take a vitamin supplement? Because what I hear all the time is this is relatively confusing. You're talking about mineral interaction, vitamin and mineral interactions. When should I take it? Should I take it before meals? Well, here's the challenge. First and foremost, if a vitamin or mineral supplement is going to work, you have to remember to take it. So again, if you're much better first thing in the morning, from a time standpoint, that might be the best for you. But keep in mind, if you're taking a vitamin and mineral supplement, iron can be relatively nauseating, and taking it on an empty stomach may really give you some significant nausea. So what ends up happening is people stop taking it, saying, oh, the vitamin and mineral made me sick. No, it didn't make you sick. Many people just can't tolerate these on an empty stomach. The secret is when you're looking for a vitamin and mineral supplement, look for one that doesn't contain more than 100% of the daily value, or the DRIs, for a particular vitamin or mineral. That limits your body's ability to end up with that excess that we've discussed. Another really frequently asked question: does a high calcium diet increase the likelihood of kidney stones? And the science will suggest no. Because here's what happens. Keep in mind that all of these dissolved minerals in the blood must be maintained within a normal range. So say, for example, you decide for breakfast to have 3 cups of yogurt, and that's about 900 milligrams of calcium. Is that a cause of your kidney stones? No. The 900 milligrams of calcium by itself is not going to appear in the blood. Some of it's going to go to bones, some of it's going to be stored in other tissues, and a consistent amount is maintained in your blood supply and therefore in your urine. One of the dietary variables that increases the risk of kidney stones, however, is dehydration. If you're unable to urinate out the excess and your urine becomes really very concentrated, the calcium that is in your urine can precipitate and form a stone. So if you are prone to kidney stones, talk to your doctor. But a high calcium diet is not the predominant cause. It can be your genetics, as well as are you hydrated. So I'd suggest you take a look at the lecture on hydration. Now, we talked a lot about bioavailability. And another question that I get is the calcium in fortified foods bioavailable? And the answer is, some say yes, some say no, because a lot of it depends on the form of calcium, as well as is it a liquid or a solid food. So there's research on the calcium fortification of orange juice, and that calcium is in the form of calcium citrate malate, and that is a biologically available form of calcium. Now keep in mind, there are subtle differences depending on the form. So there can be calcium citrate malate in orange juice and maybe calcium carbonate in a different food. There will be differences. The question is, can we as a consumer look on that package and figure out the bioavailability? No, you really can't. So the secret is get your calcium from a wide variety of fortified foods, and then you'll get a wide variety of calcium salts. Now, does calcium need magnesium to function? And the answer is yes. Most of these minerals have a very delicate dance and they work hand in hand with one another. So calcium and magnesium are going to work hand in hand for bone formation. So yes, they really do depend on one another. So this is why I will tell my clients over and over again, don't rely on supplementation of a singular vitamin or a singular mineral to optimize your health. What you're really looking for first and foremost is dietary balance. So again, look for forms of calcium in the diet that you like. Maybe you're not a milk drinker, but you really do like yogurt. Or maybe you don't like yogurt, but you can drink calcium fortified orange juice. So again, look for a food source and then think, where can I get a whole grain? So maybe instead of having a processed breakfast cereal, you go to oatmeal, which again is a whole grain. So look for a way to partner these two together with a whole food approach. Another frequently asked question, you said that phosphorus and sulfur and chlorine are essential to life. Why don't we hear more about them? For example, we never hear about taking supplements for them. Well, there's a good reason for that. Phosphorus, for example, is found in almost every food. So it's going to be found in protein-containing foods. And actually, if you kind of even flip over the can of soft drink that you have, you're going to see the word phosphoric acid. That is a source of phosphorus. So that's one of the reasons why you don't see it. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just really means that a dietary deficiency is unlikely. Again, it can occur if you're taking a medication, but it's really unlikely. So you might see them on a supplement label, but you're not necessarily going to see them advertised in the media. Another question I get all the time is, in these lectures on vitamins and minerals, I've discussed daily reference intake, the DRIs. Are these recommended amounts appropriate for everybody? Well, the answer is no, and let's explore that a little bit. Certainly DRIs in part are going to be based on body weight, so it's going to change depending on how old you are. So the DRIs would be less for younger people, and then they kind of ramp up until you're full grown, you're an adult, and then they stabilize, but they may change a little bit during the life cycle. A key important point, however, though, is these DRIs are designed for people who are well. We have no DRIs for illness. So say, for example, you have a family member in the intensive care unit, you might see significant amounts of vitamins and minerals being used. Because again, the DRI is designed to cover about 98% of a well population, not for individuals with chronic disease. DRIs also may change if you are overtly deficient in a nutrient. So for example, if you looked at a prenatal vitamin, you're going to see a lot of iron there, for example. And if indeed the pregnant woman has iron deficiency anemia, the physician may prescribe a significantly larger amount of iron than even is what is recommended for pregnant women. Another example would be if indeed you have Crohn's disease, and Crohn's disease causes significant malabsorption. So it's not a state of wellness, it's a state of chronic illness. And again, many individuals are going to be given magnesium supplements to deal with the malabsorption. So the magnesium level may be way above that upper limit that we discussed of about 350 milligrams, but it's very appropriate for that individual. Another great example is with the prevalence of vitamin D deficiency going up. Oftentimes physicians might prescribe as much as 50,000 international units of vitamin D, way above that upper tolerable limit. What they're doing, it's an attempt to correct a deficiency. So again, if your physician prescribes it, you don't want to say, oh my goodness, that's way above the upper limit. I need to not take that. I'm going to get a toxicity. Well, that's, again, a state of disease, not a state of wellness. Another great example would be diuretic medication. So say, for example, your physician has prescribed a diuretic to help to control your blood pressure. Well, some of the diuretics that are on the market can actually cause significant potassium loss. So you might be prescribed potassium chloride as a supplement or as a pill that's above the daily reference intake of 4,700 milligrams. Again, what you're trying to do is correct a deficiency. So although the daily reference intakes are designed for the majority of the population, there will be times that these must be modified to, again, correct whatever the deficiency is, and again, to manage that chronic illness that the individual may have. And thank you.